Live on both.
All right, do I have your attention now? Tonight is about unicorns. No, I'm just kidding. If you don't know what this is a fun mask that my friends gave my daughter. So I figured I'd have some fun tonight. It's a Bob Marley style unicorn with some funky hair and some glasses. So now that's over with. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this week's Wednesday Wellness Minutes. What we're talking about this week is going to be providing you some information to consider. It's called homoprophylaxis. If you don't know what that word is, that's a $10 word for basically a energetic form of immunization, shall we say, or education for the immune system. So it's a really loaded term, and there's a lot of controversy. This is definitely, just a disclaimer, this is not a you should do this and not that. This is purely providing information for you to consider, because there's a lot of information out there, a lot of strong opinions on both sides of the aisle, this one. So some people have very strong opinions about vaccines. Some people have very strong opinions that you should do it, that you shouldn't do it. There's a lot of stuff out there. I've tried to condense down some basic points so you can have an appreciation for sort of contrasting perspectives, shall we say. So just to give you an appreciation, I was born in 78, so that dates me to 42 years. When I was about 5 years old, we were given, about that time, about 24 doses of vaccines as a frame of reference, 24. At this current date, they have 72, okay? And that number is increasing. There's like 500 different applications out there for new vaccines. Plus, you should probably have a coronavirus vaccine coming to your doorstep pretty soon. But again, this is not about that. I just want to give you a frame of reference about how this works. So when you think about, you could dive into testing for safety, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies and things like that, whether a pregnant woman should ever receive one. There's a lot of different controversy, but if you don't know what the signs and symptoms are of an adverse reaction, whether it be from any type of supplement or medication, things like that, you want to pay attention to that. You could look at eczema, seizures. You can look at things like air hunger. There's all kinds of different symptoms that you can associate it with different vaccines and or with different treatments. Homoprophylaxis has been shown to have certain reactions itself, but every person's different, and I'm going to make a point of that in a minute. But you want to make sure. There's a Vaccine Education Council. I think their phrase is like ask 8 before you vaccinate. But you should also ask the same questions of everything you ever take. That could be a nutritional supplement, a food you take, something in a box. It doesn't matter what it is. You should definitely ask questions, because understanding how vaccines work versus how homoprophylaxis is supposed to work, then you understand it's the same premise, right? Which we'll go over in a minute. But some people like RFK, if you don't know who Robert F. Kennedy is, he's a big proponent of vaccine awareness. And so basically his contention at one point was that the Center for Disease Control is the owner of 20 different patents for vaccines. And so it's interesting, he says that the CDC is not an independent agency, it's actually a vaccine company. That's up for you to describe and you decide. I don't know any big pharma companies that are pushing out homoprophylaxis because there's not a whole lot of money in it. So take that to the bank, if you will. But just like no one thing causes any one thing, if you heard me say that before, the people that want to blame the MMR for their child's autism or some other childhood illness on one vaccine, that is, I believe, a factually inaccurate statement. I have no doubt that those things play causation and people are having adverse reactions, but just like, I was allergic to peanuts growing up. A lot of kids weren't, right? Why was I affected by that? I was not allergic to penicillin, but other kids were. So you have to understand that one vaccine might affect your child differently than my child, or me for that matter, and one food might affect you differently than mine. And you might take homoprophylaxis and have no issues, and I might take it and you might have a ton of issues. It just depends. So, there's an interesting quote here. So take this into consideration. You can insert anything you want here. Why don't foods, vaccines, homoprophylaxis, operations, things like that affect all children the same? Right? So not everyone is allergic to penicillin or peanuts or anything like that, but some of it will kill you, right? A bee sting may not affect you, but it might kill another person. And then every vaccine and or homoprophylaxis or supplement or whatever it might be taken is designed to affect the immune system. In this case, the homoprophylaxis or a vaccine is intended to affect the immune system. For some, that effect is innocuous, which means it doesn't have much of an effect. Other people, it's devastating. So not all drugs or vaccines or homeoprophylaxis or supplements are designed the same. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So you can't expect that everybody's going to react the same, because your ability to detoxify versus mine versus my child versus your child versus everybody else, it is not a one-size-fits-all. But our medical world, just like our education system, tries to bring it down to the lowest common denominator and say, well, if we keep everybody at this level, we can plan on everybody at a certain level. Like, you can only have this much aluminum in there, or you can only have this much thimerosal, which is mercury. You can only have this much fetal tissue in there, and this and that. They all have these guidelines. You want to understand that you're going to be affected differently than I am, and vice versa. So don't ever expect that just because Bobby can handle it, that Susie can handle it just the same. It doesn't work that way. If you don't know anything about vaccines, of course, there's a bunch of different types, right? We didn't know if I was standing or sitting, so we're just kind of making it through. Have you seen the new logo? Yeah, check it out. This is our team space, right? So, of course, this is one of my favorite sayings, and it's not the destination that matters most, it's who you become on the journey. This information is going to help determine who you become on that journey, who your children become on that journey, and what choices you make along that way. So there are live versions of vaccines. Homeoprophylaxis is not a live animal, live organism. They have attenuated ones, which means they're weakened. They have inactivated ones, which they've been killed and they're deemed inactive, but you're getting the DNA and RNA and stuff like that. There's toxic styles, toxoids in other words. There's polysaccharides, peptides, and all kinds of other crap. Okay? So generally speaking, the homeoprophylaxis schedule starts out, within the first couple weeks, they do polio, they do streptococcus, and then they do pertussis, and all the same things that they do with vaccines, okay? It's just done in a different way. From a homeoprophylactic standpoint, if you think about homeopathy is the principle that like cures like, or like will decrease the reaction to like. So someone with a dairy allergy or gluten allergy might take a homeopathic dilution or some type of microdosing in order to build up a tolerance to it. So what homeoprophylaxis does, similar to what a vaccine might do, whereas a vaccine might give you the actual organism, whether it be weakened or killed, homeoprophylaxis is what's providing you the same energy as that microorganism. Okay? So basic premise, you take a substance, a microorganism, or anything in the world, and you put it in, let's say, purified water, and then you dilute it down millions and millions of times. And you might think that there's nothing left, but basically, when that water, that distilled water, preferred water comes into contact with that substance, it's like writing paper or pen on paper. It transfers the imprint of that onto that water's like a substrate, right? Although you can't see me moving things through the air without there being fog here, air is actually a liquid, okay? It can come in 3 states, gas, water, and frozen. Big fun there. But when you imprint it on that substrate, that water, it becomes a carrier, shall we say. So they use the same idea, like we're going to take polio, okay, or pertussis, or meningococcus, or tetanus, or whatever it is, and we're going to put that and dilute it down so that you're not getting actually affected by the organism or the toxin. You're getting affected by, and your immune system is learning how to operate within the context. Yeah, one of our fan clubs there. So you got it. Basically what we're happening is we're educating your immune system on how to operate in this world, how to teach it to adapt to this, and understand that you're teaching your immune system like little by little, step by step by step. You're teaching it like different frequencies, different intensities, and it helps your body adapt to it and raises your immune system's awareness, which then decreases your reactivity to it. Nothing necessarily imparts immunity. Like immunization does not equal inoculation or immunity, right? So vaccination does not equal immunization. So you're not immunized against something when you vaccinate. You're not immunized against something when you do homeoprophylaxis either. What you're doing is you're educating your immune system, you're exposing it to it and having it develop antibodies and antigens and things like that within your system so that if it ever comes across it again, in theory, as far as this theory goes, you're going to gain the ground, you're going to gain the immune system that you need in order to, in the medical world, defend yourself against these pathogens, right? These things that are attacking you. Vaccines were basically thought to have started with by a guy by the name of Jenner back in 1796. Okay, that's a long time ago. But if you've ever heard of, or you probably read about in your history classes about smallpox. What he did was affected a young man by the name of Phipps with a cowpox sore. Now, interestingly enough, the Chinese have been ahead of most everything for a very long time. So Chinese medicine goes back about 5,000 years. They actually have documented cases of treating people around 1,000, I think it would be AD, they'd basically take a cowpox sore, a scab, grind it up, and then people would snort it, which sounds terrible, but that's how they were trying to do inoculation from their standpoint back in 1000 AD. Okay, so Jenner was a little bit behind the times by 700 and some odd years, but at the same time, it doesn't really matter. Just to let you know, the Chinese were doing it back in 1000. Jenner's doing it in 1796, and so on and so forth. But into the 1500s and things like that, people were doing different things as far as inoculations and stuff like that. Chinese medicine, like I said, 5,000 years. But so homeoprophylaxis, right? We talked about it. It's exposing your body to the energy form of a substance, like could be a food, a toxin, a microorganism, or something like that, that educates your immune system or your detox pathways on how to handle something if it comes in contact with it. Think of it as an education system. We use a lot of complex homeopathy here, and so we have 3 different stages. There's a general stage, which is called a serious therapy. Then there's a 1M and a 10M as a general rule of thumb. I like to describe it, even though it's not a really one-to-one scenario. It's like you get your bachelor's degree, your master's, and your PhD. So you kind of educate your immune system. But literally, sometimes I have to take a participant here and start them on the PhD level, the doctorate level, and then bring them back to the serious therapy, or go to the master's level, or even skip the other 2. It just depends on what the body needs at that time. When we couple brain training and QNRT resets, where we destimulate the brain's stress level, because when the mind gets stressed, it creates a discord in your body, and that causes irritation with a certain microorganism. That could be a bacteria, mold, fungus, parasite, or virus. And then your body shows symptoms. So when you disassociate your brain's stressors, we've got a thunderstorm. When you disassociate your brain's stressors with the different microorganism, then that bug no longer becomes an issue, okay? Just as a frame of reference. So homeoprophylaxis is thought to have started about 200 years ago, somewhere in that range. So it's used around the world. People have never been known to have it cause a death. And some argue that vaccines cause death, but again, I don't necessarily believe that's true. A child or adult may succumb to an illness that they end up perishing from as a result of receiving something that caused a detox issue, some type of hyperimmune reaction. But no one thing causes any one thing. Like, a person does not die from getting one vaccine, right? Even if it's the MMR, which there's 3 in there, measles, mumps, and rubella. That person's body who perishes after receiving that cannot handle those toxins, the adjuvants, which are the additives, the microorganisms, and the cytokine storms that explode in the body, and your body goes into a hyperimmune reaction, and then you're dehydrated, detox challenged, and then all of a sudden, party goes over, right? Now, that may upset some people, but honestly, if you blame one thing, then you're taking complete responsibility and putting on them, and then you're a victim of them. So you're not a victim of anyone unless you give yourself give that power away, okay? So getting back to, there have been studies in different countries, Brazil, India, China for certain, as far as homeoprophylaxis and how they can do widespread effectiveness as far as educating people's immune system. So you can go to a local provider of a homeoprophylaxis system. That's a program, if you will, which I'll provide you some names, and you can look them up, or you just do Google search or something like that. But the thought is that this could prevent pandemics or epidemics and things like that in your area. People say that smallpox has been eradicated, but if you really look at the science behind smallpox, the smallpox vaccine and other things like that, there are a bunch of different side reactions that can occur as a result of that. So you just want to be mindful of what that looks like. But it's been used for influenza, every one of the microorganisms we talked about. So you just want to be appreciative of that. So when you think of the risks of homeoprophylaxis, really what I can tell you is with our daughter Sophia, we did homeoprophylaxis. And at one of the stages, I can't recall which one it was, she's almost 4 now, early on, she had one that she ingested, and it caused a reaction, a strong reaction in her stomach, specifically her stomach, that was causing some reflux, like spitting up, vomiting, stuff like that. Well, we didn't understand it at the time, but ultimately we worked with a fellow practitioner and determined that really it was causing a toxic reaction in the stomach, and we needed to help with drainage remedies. At the time we were using stomach terrain, but we don't have that anymore. Now we have the small intestine, the stomach spleen terrain, stomach spleen meridian opener, shall we say. That's the actual term. But what you want to understand is this isn't something that everybody can just take off the shelf and do, right? You need to have some guidance. You need to have one of these people ideally overseeing your process and understanding what's going on in your life, in your child's life, depending on what age you're doing it at. But it's important to understand, the benefits have been shown to help people with herd immunity. Like it boosts some people's immune system based on a bunch of people doing it at the same time, just like vaccines. Or in my day, if some kid in the neighborhood got chickenpox, you just took yourself over there and you rubbed up against them, and everybody partied, and then we went home and everybody got chickenpox at once, and you were done with it. That was the mentality back then. That is what could have necessarily been done with allowing people to continue on living their lives when COVID-19 happened. They maybe could have considered isolating all the people that were at risk, keeping the people in the nursing homes that were at risk and things like that. But it's a moot point now. Now we're all muzzled. So I'll get off that. But anyway, there are alternative treatments. What you do want to know is that homeoprophylaxis does not satisfy your state, typically your state's requirements for vaccine schedule. So you'll want to talk to someone about if you need to get a religious exemption or some type of medical exemption based on your child's health or your child's ability to detoxify. That's going to be important. But basically, it's really important to understand the differences and if it's right for you. I would have a lot less of an issue with the MMR vaccine if they would split it back up to the measles, mumps, and rubella. Because for me, thinking about any human being, at what point did you ever come in contact with the measles, mumps, and rubella? Like you get kicked by a horse or something. How many people get kicked by a horse? How many people get struck by lightning? How many people get affected by the measles, mumps, and rubella at the same time? It's highly unlikely. So why it was ever combined, I'm sure there's some type of position paper out there why it was relevant and why it should be kept that way. I would like to see it split back up and it done over a delayed or a slower pace, shall we say. Because if you think about 72 vaccines by the time you're 18, that is a horse dose. They're vaccinating kids against Hep B, which if I remember correctly, it's like a sexually transmitted disease, at birth. They're like literally sticking them right there, okay? They're giving women antibiotics for strep group B and stuff like that because they don't want the child, I think it's to go blind. They're giving shots for vitamin K for clotting factor. If our children are that sick when they're born, we should probably back up and say how healthy is the mother, how healthy is the father when they're doing their thing, right? Getting ready for being parents. So at any rate, take this information and just get more educated. I don't have time. I could talk for days about homeoprophylaxis and different things you can do with it. But basic premise is you're going to educate your immune system on how to adapt to these different microorganisms. And what that's going to do is that's going to give you some type of immunity or strength against things that might be affecting you. Plain and simple. So if you want more information, let's see. I printed off a list of practitioners. There are, okay. So these, you have to double check these, but if you're in the St. Cloud area, it's Lee Aberle, which is a naturopathic physician. That's in St. Cloud. Then there's Kate Birch, who's in Minneapolis. There's Sarah Damlo, D-A-M-L-O, which is in Minneapolis. Lisa Demarius, that's in Minneapolis. And then Jackie Kramer is in Minneapolis. And Abby Matsky, she's a PhD scientist out of Mankato. So those are some different references that you have at your disposal. You can Google that as well. Just type in homeoprophylaxis. If you don't know how to spell that, it's kind of a mouthful. I don't even have it on there. So homeoprophylaxis. So homeoprophylaxis. That's a mouthful, but just type in homeopro and then it should populate. And then type in program provider near me. Should be able to find something and get some more information. Find out if it's right for you. It might not be right for you. Maybe you could do a combination of a delayed process of the vaccination schedule and then add some homeoprophylaxis in there. If you have an adverse reaction to the vaccine, you can actually use homeoprophylaxis to support your body's adaptation to that. You can talk to a practitioner similar to us or someone like us that will help you, do homeopathics for like vax reactions and detox pathways, get your systemic drainage going, mud packing the injection sites and stuff like that to get any adjuvants out of the skin or out of the muscle tissue. There's a lot of things you can do. We're here to serve you. We're here to let you know what you can do for yourself or for your children or a loved one. So if you have questions, feel free to type it in below. I guarantee other people are going to have that same question or the same concern, same curiosity. So feel free to share that with us and we'll be able to comment back. Yeah, so basically this is an opportunity for you to maintain optimal health. If you're worried about disease, keep you out of dis-ease and keep it definitely away from disease. And then maybe support and or augment your vaccine schedule, okay? So take this information, and if you feel like it's been beneficial, if you know someone who's kind of on the fence, like, I don't know if I should vaccinate, I don't know what I should do, but they genuinely care about their child, because it doesn't matter if you're pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine, or if you're pro-vaccine or pro-choice, pro-vaccine choice, because that's also a category. You can say that I'm not necessarily against what you're doing, but that's not a choice for me or my family and stuff like that. So I did a segment a while back, might have been a year and a half or so. Seek first to understand is what I believe I called it. So if you ever on Facebook, just type in Seek First to Understand under the Secoya side, and that'll help you get some more information about that. But National Center for Vaccine Education, Ask 8 Before You Vaccinate. Those are good resources. Let us know what your questions are. Let us know how we can be of service to you. We are not providers of homeoprophylaxis ourselves, but we could certainly provide you some guidance as far as if you're looking for a practitioner, if you're trying to vet one versus another, we can help you with that. But for right now, we're going to go dodge some raindrops and get in our cars and drive home. And we hope you guys are having a great evening. Let us know how we can be of service. Share with your friends and family if you feel like it's been of value. Let us know how we can improve. Let us know what topics you're looking for. And we'll look forward to seeing you on Friday for the live Q&A. And otherwise, Ella, any additions?
Not today.
Ella didn't get her cameo tonight, but this wasn't a topic she was really like jazzed on and or really like knowing much about, so she's learning too. So cool. We'll look forward to seeing you on Friday for the live Q&A, but for now, we'll sign off. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.